Welcome to Locked in My Office. I'm Dr. Shane Oberware, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking with Lauren Huested, who actually recently went through something very interesting. She fell off a 40-foot building, and so that's the first thing we talk about is kind of what that experience was like. And then this, for some reason, a bunch of mentions of poop and farts, but I guess that's just because we're children. But also some topics that are a little bit more sensitive, like the closing of Finlandia University was a big thing that hit our community. So our like all the past podcast episodes, our conversation ranges all over the place, and it's a lot of fun, and so I hope you enjoy. All right, welcome to the most recent episode. I think we're on 3, but I started counting at 0, so it's really 2. Whatever. Welcome to the most recent episode of Locked in My Office, and I'm currently locked in my office with Miss Lauren Huested. So Lauren is a coworker, colleague, whatever the word is, a friend of mine. She's an advisor in electrical and computer engineering department, and yeah, how are you doing today, Lauren?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah. How are you?
I'm so happy that break is here.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody else is too.
I'm sure there's some people that aren't.
Who would be sad about a break?
I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe people who don't get the opportunity to go home on their break. Maybe they'll get sad then. But
I suppose. Yeah, there's like a lot of graduate students and stuff like that are like I've like all my like TAs, like I've talked to them and like, yeah, I'm just working on projects and stuff like that.
Yeah, people take it as extra project time. I don't go home. Like my family lives like 8 hours away. I don't bother going home for Thanksgiving because I'm going to go there for Christmas. It's too soon.
Yeah. So I like reflected on like the previous. Did you listen to the
I did.
One I did with Jack? Yeah, and I realized like God, I'm like really bad at starting off a podcast because like the first question I asked him was like, why do you sit in this specific spot in class?
I like that. I actually really like that question.
Really? I thought it was like the stupidest question ever.
No, I giggled at it because there's a lot of psychology about where people sit,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
you proved that because if I remember correctly, he said, "Oh, I used to sit in the back and like all that," and then he got more comfortable with you, so then he started sitting in the middle ground, not front, but like middle ground.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of psychology about where people sit in their classes. Same thing like where you sit on a bus. Like if you're sitting in the back, you know, there's something different than somebody who wants to sit right up front.
Sure.
So.
Well, I'm gonna try a different tact. I'm gonna start with like the big thing.
Okay.
So you you fell off of a how tall building? How tall was it?
I fell 40 foot off of a roof between about a foot and a half, maybe 2. To be honest, I don't remember most of it because I hit my head real hard. But I fell off of a roof, obviously accidentally. Don't remember a lot of it, but I fell between 2 brick walls that were very, very narrow. So I fell, but also kind of ping-ponged down the walls, which is what actually probably saved my life. So it's pretty wild experience. And another fact about it is that the building I was on was bricked up from the front and the back. So these 2 buildings with these 2 separate roofs that I fell off of, there's no access other than the top of the building. So it's like I fell down a well, but also off a roof at the same time.
It's like nuts.
I know.
So you fell into this enclosed space and you ping-ponged, like I just imagine like a Simpsons character or something along those lines.
That's how I think about it too.
But it was like probably like much more gory and yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. So.
and then you're like trapped down there. So
yeah.
Like you had friends with you.
Mm-hmm.
What did they tell you about their like experience of that like happening?
Well, one of my friends told the story. I had a big game night, so I had a bunch of friends over, and she was there, and she was telling everybody there the story. Some people didn't even know it had happened yet, because there's just so much I don't remember because I hit my head instantly and was out cold for 15, 20 minutes. So I tell people it was way more traumatizing for my friends than it was for me. Like, honestly, because I couldn't imagine what it would be like if I turned around, one of my friends was gone, and I saw they fell down a 40-foot hole. Like, that panic is, like, unimaginable. So the way they tell it is like it was just pure panic. They tried everything they could to find me. They were screaming around, like running around the streets of Houghton trying to figure out how to get help. My friend's boyfriend called like EMS and stayed really calm and got everything sorted. But I was down there completely unconscious, so they had no idea really what had happened to me or how I was doing. And the craziest thing is that when I gained consciousness, I wasn't panicked or anything. I was just like, it felt like I was in a dream. I was like because when you come out of like being knocked out, like nothing feels real. So I was like, oh, I'm in a dream right now. This is so weird. I don't remember going to bed tonight, you know? And then the craziest thing is that I had my fanny pack still on. I had everything on me. Didn't lose a shoe. I didn't even chip a nail. And I just busted my head open, my knee, my elbow. I took my phone out of my fanny pack and I called my friend. I was like, where are you? She's like, what? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, where are you? Where am I? She's like, girl, like you fell off a roof. And I was like, oh my God. So I kept asking her the same questions over and over because I was like very concussed.
Yeah.
And the just wild EMS is up top talking to me. And then they try to see if I can get out. I obviously can't. Then they put a ladder 40 foot down after I fell down. And I climbed up a 40-foot ladder up to where the fire truck was with their bucket and stuff and whatever, which blows my mind that they actually did that because you would think they would come down first to see if I was stable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't. They just, and which is wild because then I spent like 15 hours in 2 different ER rooms and they wouldn't let me move at all because they thought my back was broken.
Oh, God.
So, yeah. And apparently when I got up there, I was like, back on the street and I remember I was like, this is kind of funny now, but I was like, gosh, I hope none of my students are seeing this.
And now here you are talking about it.
It's a funny story, but in my state, I was like, this is embarrassing. And I kept profusely thanking all of the EMS and police people. My friend's like, Lauren, let's go. We need to go to the ER because that's just who I am. I'm like, oh my God, thanks for saving me. So, but out of all of it, I had a fractured vertebrae, a broken kneecap, a huge laceration on my leg, a cut in the forehead, and a cut in the elbow, and just bruises everywhere. But I mean, considering the fall that I took, and like every doctor I've seen since has been like, do you know how lucky you are? Like they're shocked to see me because they're like, you should be dead.
Because how many stories is 45? Is that 4
It's
stories or 5 stories?
No, it's 2 technically.
Really?
Well, like the building, it's one of those old buildings with like huge ceilings. So they said 2-story, but it was about 40 feet. So, yeah.
Do you have any like residual fear now? Like, are you like scared to be like on top of things or anything along those lines?
No, because I don't remember. But this is so funny. People think I'm nuts, but I want to go back on the roof. I want to climb back up there, and because it doesn't feel quite real. My friends remember more of it because of what happened, but I want to go back up and I want to look down so that it will like hit me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the gravity of it even still, it hasn't really hit me, even though I was dealing with...
I think the gravity did hit you. But,
the gravity, yeah. Gravity did its job that day. But I need to I don't know why I need to see it.
Like a cathartic experience for you to process it.
Yeah, but I'm going to wait till I'm fully healed and my brace is off and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know why I feel like I just need to see it for things to sink in.
Yeah.
So
like wherever this building was at, you don't need to disclose, but are they going to address that problem? Like even put some chicken wire or something there?
That's a great question. Technically we were not supposed to be up there, but I didn't think about it because I'm not really a huge risk taker. I always thought something like this would happen to me on a hiking trip because that's the biggest risk I take is if I'm hiking or climbing a cliff edge or something. I've fallen, not gotten majorly hurt, but I've fallen doing stuff like that. So I would have never thought that I would be the one to just simply mistakenly fall off a roof. And it quite literally, because we don't know nobody saw it happen. We think I simply didn't see that small gap and just walked right into the gap. Like 1 foot went in and then I was gone. So this isn't usually something that people would think would happen to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go back up there because it's not technically a roof that you're supposed to be on, but at the same time, it's not really blocked either.
Yeah.
Like it's apartments up top in the building. There's a balcony, and then you can climb right up a ladder to the roof. So it's kind of like whatever. So, and yeah, I don't know. I've done this kind of stuff before, but usually I think I'm a little more aware of my surroundings, but I was not that day.
Yeah. That's super nuts.
I know. Like I said, I still don't have my head wrapped around it, but it'd be more fun for you to hear my friends tell the story almost because they
all of a sudden you just disappeared.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't imagine, if I was in their shoes, it would have been a lot scarier. I mean, it was obviously still scary, but the fact that I'm okay, too, I think is what makes it, easier to handle. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if I had, I have a broken kneecap, but, it could have been really bad. If I'd had 2 broken legs, or if I'd ruined my feet, or if I'd
broke your spine or something along those lines.
Literally paralyzed myself. Yeah, it could have been something like that. The worst, obviously breaking a kneecap isn't great, but The concussion is the worst part of all this because I'm still not feeling totally clear-headed, or I have like waves. And so I empathize with people, especially athletes who get hit a lot and have to deal with this, and especially students who have an accident like this or it's sports related and then they have to continue doing classes, because I was able to step back and like take PTO and sick time and all of this stuff. But there's so many people who can't slow their lives down, and I don't know how I wouldn't have been able to like continue if I was taking a class or something. So
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, it's probably something I need to be more sensitive, because I have had students have concussions and be like, yeah, well, I mean, usually like in cases like that, it's like, give me the work when you can type of stuff. But yeah, I think, I think people aren't informed enough about like what different traumas, like what lasting effects, like either like medical or like mental traumas, like what those lasting effects are. And I think there's also like this big mentality that still kind of exists of like just shake it off and keep going, but like sometimes that's totally not the best thing to do, like it could actually cause more harm than good.
I would agree with that. And like it has to do with the brain as well, but people don't fully understand that. Let's say somebody has chronic depression, or they had it in the past, or maybe they're now being treated, or it's been on and off. Depression actually causes memory loss.
Really?
Chronic depression, yes. So, it's a little known fact, but that's why if you've ever had a friend who just can't really keep track of anything, or you tell them, oh, remember this, remember that, and they're like, oh, I don't, and it can be worse during their deepest depression periods.
Sure.
So if somebody had a really deep depression for some reason, actually you can think of it during the pandemic when there was a huge spike in mental health issues, obviously. People were isolated, like the world was scary. There's a lot of people, and even myself, that will tell you, I can't really remember every day of that. I can't like, I could really think about it and articulate it, but for people who, were very, very depressed during that time, they're not going to have a lot to offer on that memory. So, that ties into like deep depressions can cause you to not really remember that point of your life.
Interesting. Kind of on that topic, do you journal at all?
I've done that in the past. I used to journal a lot when I was a kid. I was very dramatic. So there's some, I have one still, and I read it, I'm like, oh my goodness, girl, you were so emotional. But makes sense when you're a kid, like you're going through a lot of firsts. But I remember I was so traumatized by my brother reading my diaries that I burnt all of them. Very dramatic too, again, just being very melodramatic. Went and burned them all on a bonfire pit in my backyard. It was like, no one will ever know.
That's awesome.
But I still do occasionally. I think I should do it more. And I remember, and I wish I had taken this advice when the whole pandemic was like the shutdown and everything was beginning. Somebody said, you should journal this time because you won't remember it. And now I kind of wish that I had, because I do remember a good amount, but I'm like, there's just, you'll forget certain things in life if you don't write them down. Yeah. So. Yeah,
I've tried to build a habit, and I'm mostly successful, even if it's just like 2 sentences, like every day. I'll journal. I have like an app that I use on my phone, but it's like nice because I just looked like last week and I talked about like having to like push like a foot of snow, and currently we don't have a foot of snow up here. I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not pushing that right now. But it's really useful, especially like just for keeping those memories, but like I suppose it also reminds you of other things that had happened that day to some extent. I think it's just like a useful like overall memory booster thing. So
I think we do that with photos nowadays.
That's true. Yeah, I take a lot of pictures.
Yeah, I take a lot of pictures. If I don't have phone service or if I'm on a plane or something, I'll look through all my photos. Yeah. Because I'm like, there's nothing else to do, and we're all obsessively attached to our phones anyway. Yeah. So then I'll look through them. I'm not super active on social media anymore, but I still have all my accounts. So like, if I re-download like the Instagram app again or something, I don't want to delete it, even though I'm not active and I don't really like Instagram, because I love scrolling through all my old photos because it was curated.
It's memory lane.
Yeah, it's a curated memory because it's not just your regular photo albums. It's all these little special moments, essentially. And so sometimes I'll look through them, and it dates back to like when I first moved out of my parents' house, and so it's like, wow, this is like such an interesting way to see my adulthood, because I didn't get Instagram until I was like 18 or 19. So then I was like, wow, this is like my whole adult life cataloged here.
Yeah. So like, also on that, I know I've pretty much completely pulled back from social media. Like I'll like go on like LinkedIn once in a while, and like Reddit if I'm like looking for like a tech support question, and that's about it. And I'm curious, like what are some of your reasons for like making the conscious choice to like detach yourself from that?
Consumerism is the number one. I have multiple reasons, but I am so sick of being sold to 24/7. Social media is just ads. Like everything is just buy, sell, sell, sell. You need this to improve yourself. You need this to be better. Here's the newest fad, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that it's not helpful because in like the heyday of TikTok, and it's still huge, but like in the heyday of TikTok, I actually learned so much about things through watching people's TikToks because it's just everyday people. Well, I feel like it was better when it like was in the heyday of TikTok. I would say like when the pandemic hit, I got on it because I was like, oh gosh, I might get banned. I should get on this real quick. And you know, 3 years later. But I learned a lot, and I liked hearing other people's perspectives, and I think that's so important because like hearing other people's perceptions of life and stuff just helps you understand others and the world around you and gives you more information. So I really like that aspect of it, and social media, I guess. But I think so much of it's devolved into trying to sell you. So instead of like being like, hey, this is something that helped me and I want to tell you about it, it's, hey, this helped me and you can buy this product and blah, 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 blah. Instead of genuine, I found this thing that helped me, it's, I found this thing that helped me, wink, wink, and you can buy it too.
Yeah.
And I hate that so
much.
much.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, yeah, it's actually one of the reasons why I've been so I experiment a lot with ChatGPT, and I understand there's the whole thing with like information accuracy and stuff like that, but I've been using it as a search engine more than Google, just to like ask questions because you know Google is in the business of selling you things, right? And so, and I know we just talked about this yesterday, but this idea that Google has an algorithm for how it recommends stuff, and there's this thing called search engine optimization where people are designing their sites to get it at the top of the search engine.
Or paying.
Yeah, for sure.
Literally
you get
paying.
the advertised parts. Yeah.
The first 5 links are sponsored.
Yeah. Is it 5 now? It used to only be 2.
Depending on what you look at.
Yeah.
I've found that I have to scroll quite a bit to get through the sponsored crap into what I'm actually looking for.
Yeah. Hey, I have another question for you. You have a cat. His name is Kurt,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Kurt, Crack, something with Crack. There's a nickname of Crack.
Well, his name is Kurt. We fondly will call him Crackhead Kurt sometimes. Yeah. He's not really like a wild animal. Like, he doesn't act like a little wildcat, but he just has little crack eyes. Like, he'll stand. So from my dining room, you can see into my living room, and it's pretty far. But where you can see, like, depending on when you're sitting at the table, you can see him at the top of his cat tree. And he will like loaf. He's really small, but he'll rest his chin on the edge and he'll just stare at you like with his eyes like all big. He'll watch you from every room. So he got the nickname Crackhead Kurt. But my favorite nickname that was ever given to him is Curdy B instead of Cardi B. So we call him Curdy B. I just call him Princess most of the time, to be honest. But
what's your craziest cat story?
Oh gosh, my craziest cat story. I used to rescue cats. I used to foster. I'll tell you the most stressful cat situation I've ever been in. It's crazy and also stressful, but when I was living with my brother before I moved up here, we had an apartment together, and best roommate I ever had, actually.
Your
literally.
brother?
Oh yeah, 100%. There's nobody that I would live with again except for him, because now I live alone, I love it, but we got along really well. But he was getting kind of sick of me bringing home stray cats. And so I found a third one. And I found them homes always. I never tried to keep them because I don't want more cats. And at the time, he had a cat and I had a cat, so we already had 2 cats in the home. His cat's kind of a sassy bitch, I'm not going to lie. She is evil, but she loves him, so they're good together. And then my cat's an angel. And so I bring home this extra kitten. He was stuck in a garage in my apartment complex. I convinced the owner to let me in and get him out. The cutest thing I've ever seen in my life, like a little orange orb of adorableness. And he got returned twice after I adopted him out. Once because the girl found out she was really, really allergic, didn't know. The other time because the girl I gave him to, her housing became unstable a week after, like she didn't have anywhere to live. So she was like, I obviously can't keep an animal right now. So I was stuck with him again. I thought, well, maybe I'll keep him, you know. And then pandemic hit. And so I was working from home. My brother was unemployed for a little bit. He found a job too. But what got really stressful about the situation is I had my brother's cat, I had my cat, and then I had this little kitten, and he was maturing. So during that time, you couldn't get non-emergency vet visits. So I could not get him fixed. And you do not want a little tomcat running around with all of your cats. And I mean, it was a disaster. Peed everywhere because they're marking their territory, like terrorizing my cats. I was already like really stressed out from the pandemic, and then this was happening, and I was like, what am I gonna do with all these cats? Yeah. And so eventually I found him a home. I got him, it all worked out, but it proved to me, because if you come into my office, I'm sure students have noticed, I've got all this cat stuff in there. It says, ask me about my cats, or some students from a previous job gave me an award or like a certificate that says most likely to show pictures of your cat, and that is true. But I'm not like this crazy cat lady. I just want my one cat. Yeah. So it proved to me, like after that was all done, and now I'm just with me living by myself and my cat, I'm like, yeah, I really don't want more. Yeah. It was so stressful. Like taking care of animals is a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, I used to have this this thing when I was dating my wife before we were married, like this like cat equation, because Sarah was like super obsessed with cats, and her parents had a bunch of cats, and so it was always like, for every 5 years that we're married, our upper limit of cats that we have is going to increase by 1, essentially. But now, like, we've realized, like, we have 3 cats, and we're probably a 2-cat family. Like, we've discovered that. But do you want to hear my craziest cat story? I wouldn't say it's craziest. It's just like my funniest, and it's kind of a little.
With one of your current cats?
Huh?
Is it one?
Yeah, it's my black cat Salem, but we call him.
Is that the last one you got or no?
It's our oldest one. He's 12 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how old mine is.
Yeah. So we had him when I was in grad school. We lived in an apartment, and you can tell me if you want me to stop the story. But so we had this small apartment, and it was basically all studio and kind of like barely like a bedroom division thing. And so we put the cat litter box in the bathroom, and this one time I like had a little bit of a tummy ache, and I had trying to say this as professionally as possible. I had this really bad smelling bowel movement, and the cat came in like to use the litter box, but then was like, what is this god awful smell? And starts like scratching around the ground, like, this needs to get buried. Whatever this is, it's really
like he's
bad.
He's trying to cover it up. Yeah. You're like, dang.
He's like, did I do that? Like, there's no way.
That's so funny because well, I don't know if you have any cats that like they'll take a real stinky dump and then they will bolt.
They'll book it out like no one can know. Yeah,
nobody knows, and you're like, well, and then it hits you. My cat, he has 3 litter boxes because he's spoiled. I love like taking care of my animals. So he's got 3 litter boxes. He's got cat trees everywhere. He owns the place, but he's got all these litter boxes, and he will choose the one that's in the room that I'm in. He like needs to poop around me for safety. I don't know. And so like he's got all these choices, and I'll like finally settle down in the living room, and like I've got my food, and I'm gonna watch something on Netflix, and then I'm just like,
oh God.
Oh, Kurt.
Yeah.
Then I gotta go take care of it. But my cat will do that. If he thinks something is stinky, he will come up and he will
just like scratch around.
He doesn't like I don't know. Sometimes it's foods. Like if I'll like be curled up and like reading a book, and I'll have like a little cookie or something on my shirt, and he'll come up and he has to be on me 24/7, and he'll be like, ugh, and he'll like try to brush the blanket over it. It'll be like disgusting. Like I'm like, thanks cat. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's got some attitude for sure.
I have a sense about you, and I hope that you don't feel like I'm stereotyping. I have a sense. What is your most paranormal belief? Like your belief in a paranormal? Like, why don't you share that with me?
I think that if you don't bother them, they won't bother you. Okay,
so that's implying a whole bunch of stuff. So
yeah.
So you think that there are like spirits / ghosts, things of that nature?
Yeah, I do think that there's something. I don't think that all of these people can have a collective experience and it not have some kind of truth to it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I see things. Mm-hmm. But I also am like not somebody who's like super hard and fast with like, I absolutely believe, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I do absolutely believe there's aliens, for sure. Like we're not the only, out of, all of this amounts of space that's out there,
It's a little terrifying to think that we actually could be the only thing like living in the entire universe,
I
right?
think it's narcissistic to think that.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that I do think that. I'm just thinking that we literally are alone in the entire universe actually kind of seems more scary than knowing that there are other things out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but anyways, sorry to interrupt your. So.
But yeah,
you think there's aliens?
Yeah, I think there's, but I think it's fun and interesting to be open to this kind of stuff and to want to think about it and to have conversations about it. I'm not like hard and fast on anything for sure. I don't think I've really had any paranormal experiences. I'm pretty sure my apartment is haunted, but I also live right next to a funeral home. And so sometimes my cat will do weird things, and he didn't do these things until I moved into this particular apartment. And he's used to mirrors. He's never been weird around mirrors, but sometimes he will be weird towards one mirror in my house. And it's just odd, and sometimes I think it's shadows or something. Or there's two corners that he will just absolutely stare at, and he'll get all fluffy sometimes, staring at nothing. Yeah. And honestly, like I said, if you don't bother them, they won't bother you. Sometimes I'm just like, will you stop bothering my cat?
Yeah.
And then I just go back to whatever I'm doing.
It's awesome.
I don't know if anything's there. Maybe I sound like a lunatic talking to myself, but.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I was just talking with a student. He was like sharing like this, it's like gremlinology or something along those lines. He was sharing this idea that he like learned about in his like philosophy class about like, you can't prove that gravity isn't being caused by gremlins, right? So like that there's little invisible gremlins that are pulling you down. And even if he said like, oh, but we proved the graviton and all like this like, physics stuff, but like what if there's still like gremlins that are running the machine that causes that to happen, right?
It's a simulation.
What do you think? Do you think we're in a simulation?
I don't think so.
Do you think, or if it is, does it matter? Like if you figured out you were in the Matrix, and Keanu Reeves is like doing whatever he's doing, but then there's you. Okay. Go ahead and answer the question. I have a thing there.
I think that we're all in a matrix of our own brains. That sounds so deep. Because it's all about perception and what you choose to believe. Truthfully, there is truth. There's hard and fast truth. I don't want to get into that topic of, everyone's opinions are completely valid. Because some opinions aren't valid. I'm sorry. There's facts, and if you have a different opinion that is the opposite of the truth, then you're just choosing to be ignorant. That's willful ignorance. It's okay to be ignorant. It's not okay to be willfully ignorant. But I will say that I think it's a paradigm. You can't think outside of something until you allow yourself to. So if you truly believe something, like people who believe in the flat earth, that is their reality. Yep. So it's pretty difficult to try and argue with someone who has a literal reality that they are in, that you are not, if that makes sense.
Well, I read this book. It's called The Righteous Mind, I believe, and it talks about the differences between like a more liberal mind and a more conservative mind. And this term Matrix is brought up a lot about like, and it's not like a reference to the movie The Matrix, but just like this actual like set of things that you do view as reality, and those, obviously those things being incongruent. It's a really interesting book just to kind of like help you see like the other side wherever you may be. Yeah, but I had something I wanted to like say on that about the idea of being in the Matrix. I recently had this encounter with a student. It's not one of my students, as far as I know currently. It was at the MUB, and I was talking with this student about maker spaces or something along those lines. And then he looked at me and said, "This was the coolest NPC encounter I've had all day." He said that to me, and
sorry. He said, "This is the coolest what?"
NPC. So like in a video game. So you're the main character, obviously, in the video game. And then when you talk to like the characters in the game, those are non-player characters or NPCs. And so
that's like saying like IRL. Like, wow, this is the coolest IRL conversation I've had.
Well, no.
Right?
No, it's not that. It's saying like I'm the main character, and like and you're just like some bystander.
So he's
like
calling you the bystander.
Yeah. Yeah, I just kind of thought it was funny. I was like, oh, okay.
No, that is really funny, and I think that is someone who's probably doing it on purpose to gauge reactions, which is also funny, because bamboozling people in like a public space is kind of hilarious,
Yeah.
but that is really interesting. No, there's a lot of, I mean, that kind of goes back to the conversation of social media and technology, because there's a lot of phrases or things that are being developed on the internet and on the web or whatever platform you're on within that people are taking into real life. And this is actually a really funny thing I like to talk about, because I've come up with this theory. So when we're all in, me and you, we're in an old folks home and we're in diapers, and our kids shipped us off there, or whoever is in charge of our lives. Granted, we don't get our brains zipped into the Matrix, so that could happen. Black Mirror episode. You seen that one?
I've never seen any Black
Mirror. Oh my gosh!
Mirror.
If you're gonna watch one episode, watch San Jupiter. It's my favorite. It's all about being old and having your mind uploaded to your own destination world. But anyway, oh yeah, language that gets brought into real life. I have this theory, because we're all going to lose our minds and we're going to lose memories. We might not recognize people that come to visit us, like our own children or family members, but we are going to remember, at least I am, we're going to remember Vine lines. Remember Vine?
You think so?
We're going to be all in our diapers being free Shavakadu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it's going to be TikTok, phrases too. I was working with a friend once in our, at one of my past jobs, in our cubes, their little office cubes are right next to each other. And sometimes we were just losing our minds at the end of the day, and we'd look at each other and we would just talk in TikTok quotes as a joke, what's one of them? Or, same thing happens with movies. The Barbie movie, everyone goes, "Hi Barbie, hi Ken," or whatever. Yeah. So all that stuff catches on, but the internet's a subsection of that.
That was, it's before internet memes, it was totally movie quotes or Saturday Night Live quotes or things like that. Yep. That was, and that still exists. People make Anchorman quotes.
Step Brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
I say something at least once a week from that movie, probably.
Yeah.
I quote Nacho Libre more than anything. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. My favorite quote is the one about Easter. Remember that one? "Don't you know? I have had diarrhea since Easter."
God.
I think about it all the time. For no reason.
I'm trying to think the most common quote I'll say. Oh, the most common quote that I'll say is, have you seen Dumb and Dumber?
So long ago.
It's my favorite
maybe
comedy
I'll
movie.
rewatch it this weekend.
But it's there's this quote where Jim Carrey comes out of a store. He comes out of a convenience store, and there's these two guys that are standing there, and he's like, "Big gulps, huh? Well, see you later." And that's the whole conversation. And so I do that all the time. Anytime there's this weird non sequitur or something in a conversation, I'll have to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I love Jim Carrey too. But Jack Black is I tell people that Jack Black is my celebrity crush.
Yeah, that's fair.
I love him.
I think he's incredibly talented.
Oh, he's so talented. He's so funny. He's personable.
Yeah.
Anything that you watch from him, it's either funny, it's heartfelt. There's even sweet messages like School of Rock. Remember that one? And he motivates all these kids to be passionate about stuff. And my favorite, I'm a huge dorky Hallmark lover. During the holidays, I will eat a Hallmark movie up. I love watching all of them. I don't care how cheesy they are and how predictable. It's just fun. It's lighthearted. It's easy to watch. My brain turns off. Excellent. My favorite Christmas movie that's a rom-com is The Holiday with Jack Black.
Love that movie.
So good. Just watched
really
it this weekend. Made my girlfriends watch it with me
Yeah.
because they hadn't seen it yet. And I was like, that's what we're watching.
Yes.
Fantastic movie. And then it's also got...
it's got Cameron Diaz and Jude Law.
and then the Titanic lady. I can't remember her name right now.
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet, yeah. No, it's such a good movie. It's literally perfect.
Yeah.
I have to watch it at least 3 times during the holidays.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I gotta go to another question.
Okay.
Are you ready? And so here's the thing I was thinking, so Spotify has the ability to have these surveys. You can have these survey or like interaction. Is that what it is? I don't really know.
Oh, I was thinking Spotify Wrapped, where it gives you your wrapped up stuff. For
Oh no! So at the end of podcasts, you can have little survey things, interaction things. And so I was thinking we should try and play with that. And so I'm going to ask you the question, but I'll also ask the audience this question.
Okay.
Okay. You ready for the question? Okay. Would you rather bleed mashed potatoes? It's anytime there's a cut, and it's like a stuffed bear, like the mashed potatoes comes out, or cry ketchup. It's like your tears are ketchup.
Oh, I hate both of these options.
Yeah, they're not very good, but what would you pick?
Bleeding mashed potatoes.
That's what you'd pick?
No,
Oh.
I'm thinking about it. I'd probably have to do the crying ketchup. I would have to because...
Do you cry a lot, or?
I mean, I get choked up at cat rescue videos quite often.
Yeah.
I can be real sentimental and gooey sometimes.
Yeah.
So I don't cry that often, though, I wouldn't say. Not like a big, heavy cry. You know, not like having an emotional crisis every day. But I don't want to bleed mashed potatoes. Does that mean like anytime I ever bleed in any circumstance, I'm bleeding mashed potatoes?
Yeah, that is
Nope.
correct. No, I suppose.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah. But
that would be my worst nightmare. No, thank you.
Like being at like a parent's funeral or something along those lines, and then crying and just having like, like you do get the ugly cry, and you pull your hands away, and it's all like red.
I think I would wear a veil.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had a situation like that and it was going to be a distraction to the current,
Because
like,
it looks like you're like got some horrible disease. I mean, you probably would.
Yeah. I mean, it also sounds like I'm trying to like, look at me, I'm the center of attention. Which was actually a really common joke me and my friends kept tossing around after my accident, because I was in a wedding 3 weeks after I fell off the roof, and I did go and I stood in the wedding, but I had to limit my interactions and such. But the joke was like, wow, you really were just grabbing for that, kind of upstage the bride with your little limp there, like all this stuff. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I gotta be the center of attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like crying ketchup at a funeral would be a weird way to mourn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
I think that if you cried ketchup, there would be even more emotionally stunted people, because you try so hard not to cry.
That's true. Yeah.
So, what a weird question.
It's a pretty bad one. Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, did you answer? What would you do?
I mean, so I cry a lot. Like, I like just like thoughts about like, like you can sit here, like this thought like comes to my mind, like one day I will have picked my daughter up for like the last time. You know what I'm saying? Aww. And then eventually, and like I'll start thinking about that, and I'll be like, "That's really sad. I need to go pick her up right now." And so I'm kind of a very mushy person. Like I'm seriously starting to like feel like I could start tearing up right now.
No, that pulls. So this is different because I don't have children, but sometimes I look at my cat and I love him so much, and I literally have had him since I was a teenager. Yeah. So it's like he has been with me my whole life, and so I will randomly be like, I'll look at him and I'll be like, just like I like get cuteness aggression. I'm like, God, I love him so much. And then I'll be like, I'm gonna be freaking devastated when he dies. Like I'm gonna be inconsolable. Like I one time almost lost him, and I'm the kind of person that's usually very calm under stressful situations. I'm the one who will, all right, let's think about this. Let's A, B, C, D, and keep people calm, even myself. But I came home one day from a trip, and me and my brother both went together, so we were both gone. And this was kind of dumb on my part. I lived on like the top 3rd story, and I would leave the balcony open a little bit. And typically I would just let them hang out there. It felt pretty safe. And he had fallen. Oh. And I get there late at night, and at first I'm like looking for him, because the first thing I want to do is see my cat. And then I can't find him, and my brother's cat is out on the balcony just meowing at us. We had no idea why. I think she was trying to tell us, like, he fell. And the amount, like, I was starting to rip things apart. And I'm very, like, specific about how I have things. So, like, me, like, throwing pillows and moving furniture out of the way and all this stuff was kind of wild. But I was tearing things apart in a full-on panic I've never felt before in my life. I couldn't control myself. Yeah. But we found him. We went downstairs to the lower neighbor, and I'm sobbing, and my brother's behind me. I'm like, have you seen a little gray cat? And the guy's like, yeah, I did. And we went out there. We found him, and he was perfectly fine. And it was so funny, because at the end of it, my brother was like, I'm glad we found him, not just because I'm glad he's okay, but also I was not prepared to handle your situation. Yeah. And I was like, I wasn't prepared to handle it either. Yeah. So, no, I do get, I get that, like, thinking about things and having that emotion, or I think about losing a parent, because it's going to happen, if someday my dad is turning 70 soon, and that feels old, and he's, especially now that I live further away, it's kind of like when you visit home now, you see the age like more, if that makes sense. Like on everyone, like nephews, I'm like, holy crap, you're big. Grandparents, well, I don't know any of my grandparents, but like my mom and dad, I'm like, wow, they're looking so different now. So.
Yeah, it's pink. Yeah, it's one of those like weird things. Like it's not fun to think about, but you can't help think about like the people around you's age and like they're going to like die. It's kind of morbid.
It's morbid, but also I feel like culturally we don't think about death as, and this sounds weird, but like as positively as we should.
Yeah.
Because it is part of life. It's inevitable. It happens every day. It happens all around us, and it is sad, especially when it's an accident or a tragedy, or it's completely pointless, or it's war, stuff like that. But like day to day, we don't really, it's going to happen to everybody, and it's almost like we need to think about it more or accept it or think about grieving rituals. I don't feel like we have those in our current like society.
Yeah.
We have funerals and stuff, but I hate funerals. They're super awkward and weird, and there's lots of people you don't know anymore. And then I stopped going to funerals because I didn't like looking at the person because they didn't ever look like them.
Yeah.
And then that was my last.
That's your last image of them, yeah.
Yep, and that's what I think of, and I don't like that because I would rather remember them and not see what looks like kind of a wax mock-up of them, But
yeah.
To each their own. I would encourage people to go to funerals if it's what helps with the grieving process, but I have a real hard time with them.
Yeah.
So.
Real quick, to those listeners, if you ever lost a cat, something I'd like this kind of like popped in my mind. They say like if you put like their litter box outside, that's what I'd heard. You put their litter box, and obviously we've already talked about poop smells, but like that's like
they will
like,
always come home to shit.
yeah. All you need to do is sit by it and know that's
I get that because I know a lot of people are like, I don't poop in public.
Yeah.
And they're like, I will not use a public restroom to poop. And I'm like, you wait until you get home?
Yeah,
I'm like, are you not compacted? Like, I'm so confused.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that affliction before, but I've gotten through it.
Yeah. Matured, grown through it. Nice.
Yeah.
It is funny. But no, that's a really interesting fact. You put the litter box outside and then they come home. I get it. Kind of, they're going to smell it, so.
So, I forgot to turn the timer on, so I actually don't know how long we've been talking. Do you have a sense of that?
I don't really know exactly when we started, but
we've probably been talking for like 35 minutes. That's my guess.
Probably. I would say so.
Okay, cool. So, I'm curious, like, so, I don't know if it's okay to talk about, but like,
just ask it, and then if we have to ask another question, we'll move on.
Yeah, like, so before being at Michigan Tech, you worked at Finlandia.
Yeah, I did.
Do you think we should talk about that, or should we?
I could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard some, I'll just say, interesting things about it since like it's closed down, and I'm just kind of curious. Like, I mean, when you were there, did you have a sense that like things were going downhill, or did you have that?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, and when I moved up here, I'd moved from working for a private school downstate, and then moved up here because somebody that I knew got a job at Finlandia, and I really liked working with them. Still to this day, they're somebody that I talk to on a weekly basis. They're a fantastic person, and now they're working over at Gogebic. So we all made it out great. So I was like, well, I loved working with this person. I want to come up here and work for them again. And I did kind of, like, especially after working at another school, I was seeing some things that I was like, But you also have to remember I moved during the pandemic. Like I moved in fall of 2020, 3 years ago this month. And so I was like, everything's weird right now. Like nothing's normal. Of course things seem off, or people seem off, or processes aren't being followed the way I would have anticipated and stuff like that. Communication breakdowns are to be expected in the time of Zoom and whatnot. And so I kind of chalked it up to just being a little bit out of it, but I did kind of, once a little bit of normalcy returned, we were still, it was COVID, so even orientation was always weird. Like we're testing everybody, we're not having big group sessions, so I was still like, things don't quite feel normal, But I did notice, truly what really, anybody who is working for a failing business, you are going to see it. And that's what, that's really what it's a failing institution. And so you're going to feel what's happening.
Yeah.
You're going to feel the stress, you're going to feel the frustration, you're going to feel roadblocks. And for me, those blocks came in the form of me trying to do what I felt was right for students and basically being told, like, we don't have that resource, or that's not how we do things, or we're not going to give this person special treatment, but we'll give it to someone else. And this is not a secret, but 80% or more of the students were athletes. So really they were just completely trying to recruit athletes to come play for us. And I feel like that a school that has a disproportionate amount of like learners versus students who came mostly for sports. And I'm not saying athletes aren't here for education, because they are. And I actually worked with athletes. My first job there was to be an athletic admissions representative. And I loved working with my athletes. So I'm not poo-pooing athletes or their dedication to their academics.
Big poop theme, anyways.
Huh?
I said a big poop theme in this podcast,
Poop.
apparently.
I'm not trying to poo-poo anything. But no, you could tell. And, near the end of it, I knew I was ready to make a jump. I felt I knew things were gonna. I just knew. I had a gut instinct. I was like, this isn't gonna stay open. There's no way this place is gonna be open anymore. And there was I don't want to go into all the details of this, but there was a final situation with a student who I thought really got the worst end of what Finlandia offered. And I really, really liked the student, and I like all my students, but I knew them for a long time because they were involved in other ways. I won't go into too many details, but I knew them for a good year and a half before they actually started with us, and their family. And so I felt very connected to them, and then to see them have a really, really terrible time for reasons that were outside of their control, especially a really, really smart, good academic student. And then to have the conversation with the parents about it, where they were like, we just want to let you know, we're not blaming you, but we want to let you know what happened. It was really crushing. So I was like, I've got to find something. I've got to go somewhere where I feel like the students are being treated the way they deserve.
Yeah.
So then I started looking, and I applied. Actually, I did apply at GoGeebic, but I knew that I wanted to be an advisor. I've always wanted to do that kind of role. So I was extremely happy to accept this position and go through the interview process and stuff. So that's what I'll say on it. There's definitely more I could share and details and stress. It was very, very stressful because change is hard, and I was working really hard to find my next move because there's nothing else up here for me other than working in education. So I would have had to move my life back downstate again if I didn't find something here.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I knew.
I'd say the closest I have to something like that is my very first job was a shoe salesman at Sears. That was my first real job. Have I told you about that?
No, because I remember I sold shoes at Payless.
That's right.
Yeah, and Payless failed after I left. A year after I left Payless, the business completely went down. So that's really funny.
Yeah, I mean Sears is still kind of kicking along, I think. But I just remember I was very. I think most people were really unenthused about the manager of the place, the head manager, but it just sticks in my head that was we really care about the environment, and so make sure we're turning our lights off, and you knew that it was they were trying to pinch and it's not that it's a bad thing to do that, but it's you could tell it's they were trying to pinch every possible penny because, yeah.
I've seen that. Or when they'll, I've been in jobs before where I've been told I'm going to get a certain amount of hours and I'm relying on that to pay for my life. And then they cut my hours due to budgets. But one last thing I'll say really quick too, because I don't want people to think I'm being overwhelmingly negative about people who came from Finlandia, is lots of amazing people worked there. So, and a lot of them are now working here. So I just want to say that too. I'm not saying that every single person was in charge of it being poor or bad, because there were some professors that I was really impressed with and how they treated students, because the people that were trying we were trying really hard to try and improve things.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is there I don't know, there's not that many bad intentioned, I don't know if I want to say that either, but if you look, that's kind of one of the things I'm trying to do with this podcast is if you look, and you talk to people, there's most people have good intentions and they've got interesting stories and all that stuff, and so it's really sad that all the people that have been affected by vibe, like the Finlandia thing. I know someone that I wanted to actually potentially bring in as like a guest from like outside the institution was Shanna over at Black Ice Comics.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
know Shanna? Yeah, because
She actually, we worked together when I was working at Finlandia multiple times because she volunteered for some events that I did with high school students.
Yeah.
So.
And her husband Rich, was a professor there, criminology or something.
He built the entire criminal justice program over there.
Yeah, it was penology is what.
No, criminal justice.
Yeah, but I think
is that what it's called?
Degree. Well, I think his degree was in penology specifically,
oh, okay.
like jail and like penalties and things like that.
Yeah. So he was fantastic, and he would do all this extra stuff, and he'd bring like students to Finland and see like different justice systems and how it's different than the U.S. And so that was actually a really cool program. I found it really. I was like, dang, maybe I want to go to criminal justice school.
Yeah, but now it's really sad because so they've got like Black Ice Comics, which is, at least from my perception, a really well established. It's doing really well. The comic book shop in town. But then Rich couldn't find a job in this area, and so now he's in Wisconsin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they're split up, and they're not. Sorry, I shouldn't say split up, but they are like geographically split up, and they're like, and I feel so bad that that's like the situation that they're in.
Yeah, because I think they moved here for Finlandia initially.
I believe so.
I'm pretty sure Dr. Gee was like, yeah, I'll come up and build that program for you.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that has a huge impact on the community, especially a small community like this. That's one thing I'm impressed with after, I didn't know anything about this area when I moved here.
Yeah.
I just knew that I was a little bit over my current job. I didn't see it really going in the direction I wanted to. There was also really high turnover at the time where I was, and so it was just like getting very exhausting, to constantly have new people. And I liked all the new people. We all got along. It's just retraining people and like just it's a lack of stability. So I was like, I would have never moved from Grand Rapids because I love Grand Rapids, Michigan, because I was like, oh, this is for me, this is the great city. And what made me make the change was the fact that the world shut down, and so for months I wasn't doing my normal life. That it felt like I wasn't enjoying the city things, and so when I was asked to look into this job at Finlandia, I was like, well, shoot, like nothing's really happening right now. And why not? Why not? If I hate it, I'll move back or something. I can figure it out. And everything just lined up really, really great. And like I found an apartment, and like the landlords were incredibly kind. Like when I first moved here, like my neighbor made me fresh baked cookies and left them on my doorstep, and I was like almost suspicious at how friendly people were, if that makes sense.
There's
totally
laxatives in that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I was like, why is everybody being so nice? And then I just realized that like people up here are just that friendly.
Yeah.
And that's something I really appreciate about this is the community. People are so passionate about like the local businesses and participating in them and being part of them. This is from Casey Bonkers. I love that place.
Sarah and I just went there for lunch.
Nice.
Well, I say lunch. We like both got cookies and like hot chocolates, and that was like our lunch.
Good lunch.
Yeah.
No, yeah, this is a really cool area. It definitely the way that people appreciate the little things in life, I feel like, is what really keeps me here, because I love that a lot of people are interested in, I guess, what I would call maybe a simplicity to life.
Yeah.
And not needing a lot of extras.
I think like across the board up here, right? So we have all a wide spectrum of like political ideologies and all that stuff up here, and that's whatever it is. But I feel like no matter what, you can talk to somebody up here, and you've always got like the outdoors in common with them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's always that, or like there's always like if you live up here, you have this pride in the fact that you live in these winters and stuff like that. It's like a consistent thing that you can always talk about pretty much anyone about up here.
Because people who don't enjoy that, they end up leaving, which is that's
true.
Okay.
That's
like
very true.
You try things
That's a big
out.
filter.
But if you stay up here, I've loved the winters up here. I like them better than downstate, because downstate you get maybe 2 days of like actual like good solid snow, and the rest of it's all half
Gross.
Snowy. It's gray, it's wet, it's dirty, it's gross. Like not that I'm crapping on. I love going downstate, but it's like up here you get a winter wonderland, and so like
if you're gonna have winter, you might as well have winter.
Literally, I'd rather have like all of it. It's just amazing. I mean, some of my best hikes that I've ever gone on have been in the winter up here, because it's just so freaking beautiful, and it's quiet. I love the quiet of the snow time, for sure. Absorbs all the noise.
2 more questions. So the first question is, what's the hardest you've ever laughed? I'll share my story, but you think about like the hardest you've ever laughed.
Oh man, I can think of a couple of things. The hardest I've ever laughed. I mean, honestly, I feel like it's what I was talking to you about right before we jumped on. Because this is so immature. But here's the truth: fart jokes don't get old.
That's true.
It's funny forever.
Yeah.
It's just funny forever. And I love to play pranks on people. I like to goof with people. Yeah. My friends and I, like, we joke, like, if there's not banter, we don't really like each other. It's just how we communicate. We love each other deeply, but we'll just be kind of mean to each other or just prank each other. And so one holiday, I think it was Easter, I had a ton of people over, and I have people who stay with me for holidays sometimes too, because I have big dinners. And one of my friends went into the bathroom. The bathroom is pretty public. It's right next to the dining room. So, like, you go in there and, like, everybody's sitting right outside of the bathroom. And so I took my Bluetooth speaker and I set it right out front of the door, and I just blasted fart noises off Spotify. And they're inside there, and they're like, turn it off. And everyone's like dying laughing, and we're all just laughing so hard because it's so stupid, and it's just cycling through these different noises, and you just can't stop laughing because it's so dumb. It's like, and I mean, honestly, it's like your stomach hurts by the end of it. But it was funnier because she's inside there and she's like, turn it off, turn it off.
Just go to the bathroom. Yeah.
And I have this plan someday, like if I'm at a public event or something, maybe I shouldn't do this, but like a festival, like bring my Bluetooth with me and set it outside the porta potties and just blast.
Yeah.
Because it's childish, and then it gets everybody in like just a goofy mood, you know? Because people forget, like, we're all just giant kids, and that stuff is funny. And playing pranks on each other is funny, especially like friendly pranks. I'm not into like dumb pranks where people get hurt or you're making people uncomfortable. That's stupid. I don't like.
It's just like absurd stuff.
I don't like YouTube pranks. Like, you watch that stuff, but I do love, like, just like a good innocent, like, goofy. I used to prank my coworkers all the time where I've worked previously. We would, like, with one of my bosses, we would take our logoed stress balls and we would, like, go into their office and, like, fill every drawer with them.
Oh, gosh.
And the overhead cabinets, we'd carefully tuck them in there so when they opened it would all
pours down.
Oh, pour
That's
on
awesome.
you. Yeah. Or I had one coworker, and we're good friends, so we're still friends after years. And one time I found a funny high school picture of his that doesn't look like him anymore, and actually some students from his high school sent it to me. And I cut it out, and he had tons of pictures all over his desk, and I taped it over every single picture of him. And it took him a while to notice, and then I did the same thing with his driver's license, and it took him about a month to find it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You gotta prank people. It's goofy. It's fun. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
You jogged my memory. So there's a lot of things came to my mind with, like, funniest things. But, like, one that you brought back to my attention, I'm so happy that you did, is in high school, in our government class, we went to our county courthouse, and we, like, sat in, like, is it civic court or something along those lines, and saw, like, cases as they came through civil court. Anyways, and so just to paint the scene, right, you're in this kind of smallish room with, like, 20 high schoolers, and we're just looking at, like, various cases. Some of us are bored, some of us kind of think it's interesting.
You're watching them happen?
Yeah, you're watching the cases as they happen. Yeah, so it was kind of cool. And then, so it's like case after, it was like 5 cases that we watched. And then this guy, like, stands up, like, it's, like, completely quiet, and they, like, say the guy's name. He stands up and rips this huge fart in a classroom, or in a courtroom that's filled with, like, 15-year-old kids. And so we all start laughing.
No!
Yeah, and so
contempt in the court.
Yeah, and so the judge didn't do anything, but, like, eventually, like, the bailiff, who was, like, this, like, completely, like, no hair guy, but, like, super bushy eyebrows, so kind of, like, comical, came over and tried to, but it was, like, one of those things where it's, like, everyone, like, tries to contain it, and then someone starts going, like, lets it back out, and it just re-erupts. Yeah, it's like,
no!
I can't remember.
Dude was probably so nervous.
Yeah, I know, he was so nervous. I can't remember what the case was, but
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough. What a rough day for that man. But oh man, how could you? What was the case about? Now I want to know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could you imagine going to court and you do that, and then there's a bunch of high school
just laughing at you? Yeah.
That sounds like a bad dream. That sounds like someone's.
That's so true.
It sounds like somebody's intrusive thoughts. Like, what if I stood up and farted and everyone laughed?
And there's a bunch of like ideal kids that are gonna laugh at it. Yeah.
See, when I used to go into high schools, sometimes I was afraid something like that would happen to me. Like, and one time, this was pretty funny, and luckily it didn't become like a thing or whatever. Because sometimes high school students can be high school students, and I love high school students. I love working with them, and sometimes they didn't know, but I could be funnier than them, so they would think they like, got me with some joke, and I'm like, haha, you thought. And I would roast them lightly enough that they thought it was funny, and their classmates also thought it was funny. But this one girl, I was helping like everybody fill out like college applications, and it was like a volunteer thing and their FAFSA and stuff. And this one girl, she didn't look super happy to be there and stuff. And then she goes, psst, psst. And I'm like on the other side. I was like, she goes, you, hey, you. Sorry, that was probably really loud. And I was like, why is this little girl talking to me like this? So I walk over, I'm like, yes. She goes, you got a rip in your pants. And I was like, what? She goes, you got a rip in your pants. And I was like, where? She goes, right in the butt crack. And I was like, ooh. So I went and grabbed, I had a jacket, like a long blazer that I could put on, but I was like, thank God she told me. And I was like, this is my worst nightmare. Yeah. That's like an intrusive thought. Like, what if I go into a high school and my pants are ripped? And then it happened. Thankfully, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but I did go up to one of the other volunteers and I was like, did you know how to rip my pants? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, you better not have known. Because, like, tell people, you know what I mean? Like, ooh.
I hope I never get in trouble for this. Well, wait, that sounds bad. For some reason, my flies like always ends up down, and I'm like, God, why does this happen? It just, I don't know if I don't know how to use pants or something. But and so I'm like, God, it's gonna. Anyways, and I had a student that was polite enough to like in my digital logic class to write like your flies down on their tablet and just like turn it toward me. And of course, I'm like an idiot and I like draw attention. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And I'll like fix it. I probably should have been more discreet, but.
No, I kind of love that though, because it's like, you know, stuff like that happens. We don't all have to be super embarrassed about mistakes like that. Yeah. Like if there's something in your teeth, you got a booger hanging out of your nose. So for you to be just be like, oh shoot, all right, you know, maybe it'll make people feel a little less embarrassed about their own things, because it's like, you know, it is embarrassing, happen, but that stuff happens, and it is better to just tell someone. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. Imagine if I went through the whole day at a high school with a big rip in my pants. Like, oof. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask the last question.
Okay.
So the last question is, what album do you recommend? Like, what do you think people should be listening to, or what are you into right now? What does that sound like?
An album that I think people, it's tough because in this day and age, it's like people don't really listen to, I mean, I do occasionally, depending on my favorite artist, but it's like more so that I listen to playlists I've made of a myriad of artists, or like just my liked songs.
Wait, is that how you pronounce that word?
I think so. Myriad.
Oh, okay.
A myriad of options.
Myriad. Yeah. Yeah.
I could
That's
have
a weird
it wrong.
Word.
Who knows?
It's all good.
An artist that I am just like very. Can I give two? Is that okay? Or is it only one?
No, actually, I'm not going to publish this if you put two out.
Oh, really?
No, I'm just
all right,
kidding.
I'm giving 5.
Go.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, go for it. Give us 2.
So, I love all kinds of music. I'm not really into like twangy country, but like classic country. I'll just say that. There's an artist named Apache, because I really like EDM stuff, house music and all that jazz. The most fun you'll ever have is at like a house concert. And there's an artist named Apache, and he is a music producer, so it's, you know, it's produced music, it's EDM, it's wubby. But he has a live brass band with his production, and then he additionally will do like remixes or samples of classical music. So one of them he does, you know, it's like Mozart or Tchaikovsky or something. But my favorite, oh gosh, there's just so many really good ones. The best one that's like an example of his mix of classical and EDM is Lacrimosa. Literally Mozart's Lacrimosa. So I would suggest looking into Apache. The Renaissance album is amazing, but also the music videos are really, really cool. And I've seen him live, and he was incredible. It was one of my most favorite live experiences I've ever had. I was actually supposed to see him, but then I fell off a roof, so I was supposed to see him again. And then the other one, I really like, I gotta find the guy's name here. I really love classical violin. Like, that's probably like my favorite thing to listen to.
Are you gonna say David Garrett?
Nope. I'm gonna talk about a up and coming artist who actually got big on TikTok. So talk about, social media can really blow people up. His name is Joel Sonny. I think he's only like 22, and he can just like produce the most beautiful music with violin. And my favorite song from him is Luminary. And if anybody is like a fantasy reader, because I love to read like fantasy books, that song will make you think of every fantasy book you've ever read that you fell in love with. It makes you like, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to go back and read Lord of the Rings or something.
Oh God.
So it's really, really good.
And that's, what's the name?
Joel Sonny.
Joel
Sonny.
Gotcha.
Luminary is my favorite. It blew up all over on like social media and stuff. But yeah, and it's like, there's no words or anything. There's no vocals. But it is just like really beautiful. I think it could be good study music too.
Yeah.
So Lacrimosa, I don't know if that would be, because it's it's pretty hard. It's like hard EDM, but it's so good. Gets me fired up. I'm like ready for my day.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll probably check that out, because I really do like when I'm trying to do like intellectual stuff, like listening to like violin related stuff or like
Piano?
classical. I like piano stuff. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I like in the last like 5 or 6 years, I've completely opened the floodgates to like any form of music. Like if I like it, and it's been all sorts of stuff.
Well, if you're on Spotify, you can listen to my piano mix. It's good stuff.
You'll have to share it with me.
I will.
All right. Well, I think that's probably an hour. I don't know. Yeah,
I think
probably like an hour.
I think it's been an hour.
Nice.
It's 3:20, maybe a little over an hour.
I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so this has been this episode of this podcast, Locked in My Office. I've been locked in my office with Miss Lauren Huested. It's been super cool talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And also just some closing work here. So what can you do as listeners? Well, one, on Spotify, I posted that I'm going to post this survey on, the mashed potatoes or ketchup. And maybe it's a really bad question and no one wants to interact with it. And that's fine. Send me that signal if you don't want to interact with it by not interacting. But also, if you go to oberloier.com/limo, right? So oberloier.com/limo. You'll find like different ways to like listen to the podcast, because we're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And then also, you can recommend someone that you think should be on this podcast. So you could recommend a student, staff, someone in the Keweenaw, or if there's even like a guest that's coming in, someone that you just think has like an interesting story or something that you think would be fitting to be shared on this podcast. So there's a form for you to do that. And also there's another form that I've added for you to just say like, here's questions that I would like to see asked, just in general. Or like maybe there's a very specific concern about something that's happened in your life or something along those lines. And it might be something that I'll see and then I'll spark a conversation for whoever the next guest might happen to be. So anyways, thank you so much for listening and have a super cool day.